Hello everyone and welcome back to another Moxtober daily recap. For those of you who don't know, Moxtober is an annual event where for each day of the month of October there's a different one-word prompt, and based on that prompt people perform various creative endeavors related to the game of Magic the Gathering. Most people design custom cards, which is what we review in these daily recaps, but people also draw art, write articles, and make deck lists, anything creative related to the game. So today's word is Wyvern, or Wyvern, or however you pronounce it. And if you want to find designer credit for all the designs we talk about today, the full files that we pulled this small sample from, and instructions how you can submit your own cards to be in these files to potentially be featured in future recaps, all of that is in the description below. But yeah, with that, let's get into our first card of the day, which is going to be okay. Actually, I'll leave it to you guys. Should I go for something flavorful or something mechanical?
Start with mechanics.
Okay, let's go to Chrome Wyvern in the mtg.design file. This is pretty simple. It's a 4 and a blue 3/3 flyer, nothing to write home about. The interesting part of this is trinket cycling. Pay 2, discard this card, search your library for an artifact card with mana value 1 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. And I really like the idea of this as like a very specific type of tutoring that you can put on a bunch of stuff, but that in a decent number of environments is not going to fetch you something insane. Like, I think that as long as you're like younger than modern, you're pretty good. In modern, you can get like probably like chalice and some other disgusting stuff, and older than that, you can get like Moxen or whatever, and like cheap hate pieces. Um, but I like this as a sort of like catch-all for very cheap, like maybe like cheap cards that would usually be sideboard cards, but you can like play the main board as like a toolbox thanks to trinket cycling. As a mechanic as a whole, I think that it's probably something that you'd include in a limited that's very controlled, where like the trinkets you can get are like a very integral part of the environment. So it's um, like maybe like all of your rare slots are different trinkets, and the idea is that there's a density of trinket cycling so that even though you only have a few copies of these big engine cards for your decks, uh, you can like fetch them up with your trinket cyclers, which I think is an interesting way of doing consistency despite while having powerful or limited engines in your format. Yeah, like this is just one thing where it's like if I had a month to spare, I would love to just like sit aside and like plan out like what would an optimal environment with trinket cycling look like? Even like uh, just making a cube out of existing cards and then just slapping like 6 to 8 trinket cyclers at the common.
When I
I,
oh, go ahead.
the cards that this makes me think of most immediately would be like the capsules from Shards of Alara from Esper, but like as much as this can get Executioner's Capsule and that can kill a creature, like the rate you're paying on that, like to discard a card to get the capsule, then you're paying for the capsule, then you're paying for the capsule's activation cost. It's extraordinarily fair compared to what it's like, this can tutor for anything, this can transmute for, there are all these powerful artifacts in history, but like in limited, I think this would be pretty easy to keep in a very safe place.
Yeah, and I guess to compare to an EDH, I would go, all right, do I have my soul ring out yet? No, I don't. Okay, so I paid 3 for a unworn power stone, I guess, which is could be okay. But I like the callback to Trinket Mage or the Trinket cycling for flavor wise for this being an artifact Drake. Why this one has trinket cycling, I'm imagining two things. One, I have recycled my Drake before it hatched, which is kind of like a trading my egg away for something. Or the Wyvern has its own treasure trove of things, and Drakes are smaller than dragons, so they only have small treasures, and it fetched me one for me. Either way is sounds kind of neat.
Yeah, I just like the idea of cute little wyvern familiar. Just I like an artificer being like Chrome Wyvern, fetch me my spanner, and just like across the studio or whatever, Chrome Wyvern just goes searching around for it. But yeah, um, that's all I have to say about this first card. Juliet, what is your first card going to be?
So my first card is going to be also in the MTG.design. This one's by Cocatrix. It's Guivre-en-reve. Uh, starts with a G, if that helps. Um, this is it's a green and a blue 2/2 snake with renown 1. It's got the typical like blue-green snake coatl ability, like a basic curiosity, but also when it's renowned, it's a drake and has flying. I'm a big fan of renowned. I think this is a fun play. You already want to like get this one in because of the coatl ability, and kind of growing into the bigger form is fun. Of course, Guivre or Weave and Wyvern are cognates of one another. Wyvern comes from this word, but both come originally from viper. That's the kind of like original cognate that leads to a bunch of different supernatural creatures that are like, hey, we maybe made these things up for heraldry, and then fantasy authors decided to spin them off into other things.
Yeah, I love the tracing a lineage as if there were um like you were aspiring to become something more majestic when you become renowned, you get that renown counter, and it's a natural evolution of flying and a bigger body, of course. But yeah, it's very simple, very good.
Yeah, and like I was honestly hoping there was like some sort of like specific literary reference because I'm like, oh shit, there. When I saw this in the file, I was like, oh shit, there's like dashes and there's an accent. This sounds like a name. I feel like this is a literature reference that I just don't get. I hope Julia talks about it, but the I still like, yeah, like the general reference to like heraldry, um, and kind of like putting a different spin. And yeah, just the idea of like, I feel like wyverns always play like second fiddle to dragons. So here, this be having like this aspirational quality of growing into a wyvern, or in this case, a drake. But like in the wyverns are basically always typed as drakes. But yeah, so like I liked that like flavor nod there. Also, it does feel very snaky with the Ophidian trigger and all of that.
Oh,
Mm,
right, they were
good
Ophidians
call out.
before they were coatls. I forgot about that.
Okay, Bradley, what is your first card going to be?
All right, let's jump over to Magic Set Editor and let's go to Venerated Ashmage is the name of the card. This is part of a multiple card cycle demonstrating an ability word called Wyvern Heart. And all of those care about whether you have power greater than base power. And I appreciate this type of mechanical direction because red is the one that the other card in the file is like a mono red card. So red has fire breathing as one of its most common abilities. But also this execution on this card specifically also pulls in prowess, and I thought that was another clever common mechanic that you might see on cards, given that prowess is deciduous, but like just barely, quote unquote, right? And I think that there's other ways you can find to pump like instant speed, like is +1/+0 and first strike those spells. And I think there's a lot of space here to make for a very fun, limited type of mechanic with this.
Yeah, I kind of love it. I think that, like you mentioned, like one thing is that there is a mechanic by Canterbury Egg that was originally, I don't know if it's still in it or it was removed from the pirate set Dark Seas of Shurian, which is if like if this card, I think it's like if this card has like uneven power and toughness and they were all like rounded stats, you do a thing. Um, and there's lots of like interesting ways of enabling that. But this feels like a little bit like like even though it's functionally the same thing, I think that what makes this a lot more interesting is it tells you like, hey, you want to like you're going to increase this thing's power. You're and then having the prowess there is like an immediate nod of like, hey, here's one way you can increase this thing's power just for free. And like you're mentioning, like making cantrip or like not cantrip, making combat tricks matter more, um, making fire breathing matter, yeah, or like you can have mentor and stuff like that, like plus one counters, and the plus
Mm.
one plus and like because of allowing you to use stuff like plus one counters, there's a lot more design space than the uneven PT thing. So yeah, I really vibe with this. It takes a lot of space that you want to be doing anyways, and then rewards you for it, which I think is a good way to do mechanics generally. Make people naturally want to synergize with them.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said. The thing I would look for in this set is okay, what's the worst aura that is printed in this set that becomes somewhat playable if you've got like 6 Wyvern Heart creatures? Uh,
Mm. Very cool.
Oh
Love
yeah,
it.
especially because like um, I would love to see like when like Wyvern Heart, when a card name dies, if its power was greater than its base power, deal damage equal to its power to target opponent or something like that. So you can like mitigate the 2-for-1 potential that auras usually come with. It's like, ah, oh, damn it, they enchanted the Wyvern Heart creature. Now if I kill it, I'm screwed.
mhm.
Oh, that you also made me realize. Like I want to root for the +1/+0 aura in this set. When now that you mentioned it, Juliet, but now that also makes me realize that equipment, we got to look out for that. How much easy it might be to enable these.
That's a good point.
Okay, so I talked a lot about some cool mechanical stuff. Now I'm going to go over to some silly flavor. Let's go to Wyvern in the MSC file. Um,
Hmm.
though really, I feel like this should be like more of like a Whatvern or like a Whovern. Um, so
A Witchvern, maybe?
yeah, exactly. It's a Wind Drake. If an effect would have you choose a card name, you may instead choose two different card names. It should say instead. Or no, it already says instead. I'm blind. You may instead choose two different card names. I'm just used to instead coming at the end, so I just completely slipped over it there. But let's go past my verbal typo. So I this feels like one of those things where like it feels like a silver border design just because of like how out there it is, but there's literally no reason that it couldn't be black border as far as I know. It's just like it's just weird space, and I love the concept of like what kind of environment is this in where you're naming stuff often. Like I want like an obnoxiously small set where like name where like the entire thing is like flavored around like a classic fantasy like the power of names type thing, and you just and the idea is like you name a bunch of spells as the game goes on, and it just creates like this long. It's like the okay, so I've named my like Polkadoodle dot with my Zipadoodle, and therefore it has +1/+0. But see, I named Polkadoodle dot with my cockatoo, and the cockatoo gives it minus blah blah blah. And it's just like there's all these like little considerations for named cards, which I can definitely see tracking that becoming annoying. But I think it's the type of very silly gameplay that I could see a single limited executing to great effect.
I think this is a silver bordered card. I'd written this was in my notes as I was going to put the question to everyone. Is this is clearly on the border between black border and silver border, but where would you put it? I do think between the joke name and how kind of reduplicatively complex the effect is, especially in unspace where like you can have a bunch of different cards that each have the same card name because of silver borderedness. I think it plays in a better space there. If this was in black border, I mean, I'm putting this in my Declaration of Not deck. Uh, make that card see a little bit of play.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna slam this with like Nevermore and like
Mm-hmm.
or like what something Halo, not Gilded Halo, Ruined Halo.
Yeah, Ruined
Yeah.
Halo and Declaration of Not for the Lauren and the Shadowmoor versions.
Oh yeah. So the just going all in on that. Um,
A recent one, a peculiarity is Garth One Eye. When you choose Shivan Dragon and Terror, is it both at the same time? It says create a
Oh,
copy of the card with the chosen name. So the chosen name. So is it one card that is both a dragon and a terror?
oh man, that's weird. Though I'm gonna put that more on.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe it's silver. Yeah, it's a
Garth
good
One
point.
Eye.
yeah, I'm putting that more on Garth One Eye being weird than Wyvern.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
I'm gonna defend my baby over here.
That is fair. Yeah.
But no, I could totally see
Uh,
this running into some weird or unintuitive interactions when you like consider a wider card pool. But yeah.
but I love, but I love this card regardless. When I saw the card for a long while after I wrote it down, I just kept repeating myself. But Wyvern and why? Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I want to say this is a great silver border design. That does not make it a bad design. It is great when there's a good, straightforward silver bordered card design.
Okay. And with that, let's go to your next card, Juliet.
Great. Let's go in the MSE. This card is Stage Trained Wyvern, designed by Angel of Grace. One in the blue creature Drake common. As long as you control a bard creature, Stage Trained Wyvern gets +2/+0 and has flying. It's a 1/2. I This is a fun common. You know, we love straightforward, fun, original common designs. I like how straightforward the flavor is here. Like, I like, okay, this is a bard. This is I get all the different parts of this. Normally wyverns would fly, but this one's been, you know, trained to only do it in the presence of the trainer. Um, and this seems so much more exciting to me in blue, where it's harder to come by like 3 power, or especially 3 power at 2 mana, than this type of card often is in white, which is, I feel like, where we usually see the like, oh, here's the creature. If you control the creature type or fulfill the set local effect, whether it's snow or +1/+1 counters or enchantments, this creature gets the bonus and the flying and everything. And because white already gets good bodies small, those to me almost always feel underwhelming, whereas this feels like exciting to me.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah,
would give it flying on its base, but other than that, I very much agree with like this is just an a very enticing card for making me go, oh yeah, okay, so my aggro deck, it's in blue now. This is my blue aggro deck. Um, Also, a little bit of, I guess, a tidbit if you've been following all of these videos throughout is that uh, Angel of Grace has been submitting a bunch of different bard designs, which I'm not sure if it started with this, but God, what was the prompt? It was they submitted a Amadeus card uh, with
Mm.
banding. I don't remember which day it was. I think it was for Duel because they submitted like an Amadeus card with like Battle
oh,
of the Bands flavor, and then they submitted like an
yeah,
Act of
yeah. Bart
Treason
that
that cost.
bending.
Yeah, then they had an Act of Treason that cost one less if you control a bard, and I think they might have submitted some other bards that didn't make it into the show. I don't remember them, but this would be the third of their saga of making bard tribal a reality to get on the show.
The 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 fact that it gets flying after the bard is present reminds me of Pokemon with Charizard not listening to Ash until it's in the mood. Early Ash, but so that's why maybe it's not flying, like it's just kind of sitting on its laurels on the ground, not really caring. And then when the bard comes around, it gets all like spiced up and excited, so it'll fly in the air.
Yeah, like again, and this is like here we go. Here's my catchphrase. Mechanics is flavor. It does such a good job of like evoking all of these like different media references and emotions and like just from that a name and a line of text. This could like lack the art completely and we would still be able to like visualize what this is supposed to be. So, yeah, I think that's a good a point in the card's favor as well. But yeah, So thanks once again to Angel of Grace for this design. And next up, Bradley, what is your next design going to be?
All right, let's head on over to mtg.design. We're looking at Rion or Rion, Dirhil, the Elegant. Okay, so we're looking at this Elder Drake here, looking also majestic here. Lots of majestic drakes, very nice. Bow counters for multicolor spell. Multicolor is a fun direction and of choice, and but having the bowing here, I think, is a really fun like uh dynamic to have here. For me it reads that okay, so this thing can't be blocked because when you attack you tap it, and then well, I guess whatever you cause a bow on, but assuming that you cause the blockers that would block this to tap, you just get in there, and then yeah, if it untaps, that means you can go and also use it offensively, I guess, as well as is put it on your own creatures to get vigilance if you manage to untap it with your other
Yeah, it
tricky
says target creature you
ways.
don't control, which is something I don't like. I wish it just said
Oh,
put above.
I see there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I was thinking that too, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I can't like freed from the real to do some silly stuff with this. Well,
Mm.
yeah, this was also on my list. Speaking of like cards that evoke media references, this gave me the vibe of like Buckbeak from Harry Potter. Um, I don't know why, but like my current like comfort binge is watching reaction videos of people who are watching the Harry Potter movies for the first time. Um,
Oh.
which like fuck J.K. Rowling. Let's just make that clear because I'm talking about Harry Potter. But other than that, I'm really enjoying. I like that Harry Potter is a piece of media, so I'm enjoying people like having that like childlike experience. So Buckbeak was fresh in my mind, and with like the bowing scene where it's like you got to bow to it, and then it'll bow to you, and then once that like contract is established, I was like, oh yeah, this is it's a drake, but it also has a beak. It works out. I feel it. I'm feeling the vibe. Um, but yeah, I like the idea of like everything following along with this thing, either out of respect or like maybe there's like it's like a hypnotic dance. So you see that big frill there, um, and yeah, mechanically, I basically just agree with everything that you're saying. I think that like um, the ability to have this function as like a mass board tap down, um, a sort of like synergistic thing with a combo with like freed from the real with your own creatures, assuming that like that's errated in. Um, it's just like a unique and like again with commanders it's hard to like find a unique niche, I think, to design a commander and that's still like synergistic and like encourages build arounds. This does it in a really neat and elegant fashion. Yeah, so all of those words for flavor good, mm, d- mechanic unique.
Rather than like a Buckbeak type thing, the thing that this makes me think of, and this might seem really circuitous, but they're doing the Warhammer 40k secret lair at some point. If they instead did a Warhammer Fantasy secret lair and did cards for the lizard men from Warhammer Fantasy, and then had to do the like magicified version, like the perfect pet, you know what I mean, like the side along magic versions of stuff. This feels like the magic version of one of the lizard men lords from Warhammer Fantasy.
Oh, I'm not familiar
Yeah, like
with.
so like what
Yeah.
evokes that in you?
I the like regalness, especially the
Mm.
like authoritarian ruler sort of vibe. Obviously this is just the elegant. We don't know that this is like the leader of these Drake people, but the dinosaur vibes, the coloring vibes. I love the giant eye spots and how they play into this. Um
Oh, also,
y-
if you look at the frills below, there's like silly like sharp teeth there, and I love that too.
Oh wow. That's great. I did not even notice the painted on sharp teeth. That's incredible. A plus to this artist.
Yeah, Brian
Mm.
Valeza. I believe they uh, did a bunch of magic arts recently, um, but they're like a prolific artist. So yeah, I I, I don't. I think this Brian Valeza may be one of the artists who like lots of people were using in a custom magic space, and then he ended up getting like hired by WotC and now works on like actual card arts. Um, like Anato Stark and a few other artists. I'm trying to remember. I'll like if I remember, I'll like try to edit it and post the names. But yeah, there's like a handful of like really prominent artists whose arts were used for custom Magic cards who then like made it big in actual Magic, and I love to see that. Because again, like
Oh,
there's so much personality in this one little fella's like art. Like everything from the frills to the choice to give it like a beak rather than a more traditional snout, the coloring, the fact that it's in like a more jungly environment rather than like uh, I think we're kind of like trained to expect dragons in a more like Western fantasy environment. So yeah, I like just lots of like little unique choices that make this art super cool. I'm
mm.
aware that I'm like rambling at this point and not talking about the card itself, but like I feel like these are just appreciation streams, so I'm full on that energy tonight.
Hey, if there's any card that you're gonna go and pay respects to or appreciate a lot, it's this one. You're in a way you're bowing to it.
True.
I had to look it up because I was like, what was the type of counter on that equipment from Kamigawa block? It's not bow counters, because that would be funny for there to be bow counters and bound counters. It's aim counters.
Ah,
That's what we had in the past.
I remember what's the new mechanic from Crimson Vow, the mentor alike? Training.
Training.
Yeah. And like someone like there's apparently like an old Kamigawa thing that puts training counters on stuff. And it's like, how does this work? And like I just and I have no
Well,
idea how
if
that
the creature
works.
has both training and training counters, it has Bushido,
Ooh.
equal to the number of training counters.
We're just gonna bury this in the comp rolls, and if it ever comes up, it's gonna be hilarious.
Mhm. What's our next card?
Okay, so let's well, someone mentioned Garth One Eye for my
Hmm.
last card. And so a card that evoked that kind of vibe for me is Chromatic Drake in the MSC file, uh, designed by Calypso slash Nemeia Starag. Um, so it's 2 white for a 3/3 flyer, pretty simple. But if you pay Wooburg when it deals combat damage to a player, you can sack it and then get 5 iconic 1 mana spells from each of the colors: Cloud Shift, Brainstorm, Duress, Lightning Bolt, and Nature's Claim. I think that some of these are obviously more situational than others, um, but I think that's also kind of a constraint when you're limiting yourself to one CMC spells that are also iconic enough that you don't need reminder text. So I'm and also like power balancing it, like because you could easily put like Path of Exile or Swords of Plowshares there, but then that might like push the power level of this card a little high, which I don't think I mind since you're paying like 2 white, and then you have to swing and connect and then pay Wooburg. So maybe pushing the power on this is also acceptable. But I also like how each of these cards like does different things as well. But yeah, like I think that the idea of like conjuring cards that are iconic is, while obviously something like infeasible for paper play, is a really cool and cute idea for uh, digital play. And this is kind of like the best of both worlds, where since you're insta casting them, like you don't need to like actually like have the conjure thing of like it's like a card that moves zones, but you also get to like essentially put in spells that are copies of iconic cards and have players like just play with them. So yeah, and I think that I love the idea of just because I think that Chromatic Dragon has like a very specific vibe these days because of like Dungeons and Dragons, and I think that I like that this is kind of like, yeah, no, this is just chromatic in MTG terms. Thank you very much.
I I like that. So drakes historically have been associated with instances of sorceries as like the blue red signpost in a lot of sets. So this is like a little tie-in with why this is a drake that's doing this. Also, white is like while green is really great at providing all colors of mana, white is one of the ones that are most friendly to all the different colors working together. So it makes sense why it's a white Drake doing this with the 5 color cost here. It's a good pick of cards for what to be afraid of. Like why do I care if you get this besides the value? Like, oh wait, I may have a really valuable creature or artifact or enchantment or a card in my hand I really don't want you to take out of the hand. So I'm gonna want to stop you from doing this. So that's some good gameplay, I think.
Gone back and forth about whether or not it'd be really fun if the like sacrifice window allowed for you to cloud shift this card. And I think I've come down on liking it the way it is, where that window isn't available, because between brainstorm and duress and lightning bolt, you're usually getting a kind of your card's worth out of the deal. It is kind of fun that nature's claim you sometimes just don't want to use, because I don't want to give my opponent 4 life. Like that's not me. That's not this vibe.
Mm, that's a good point. I guess you could combine it, right? You would, but in the end, they you do lightning bolt to them, and then you natures claim their thing, but they still in the end get one more life.
Right, and you dealt 3 damage to them in combat damage. So you're like, deal 3, then
Yeah.
then deal another 3 to you. But you get 4 life back. Sorry about your artifact. Here's your life back.
That's funny. Hmm.
But it's also okay for not all of the modes to always be great. Like that's fine.
Yeah, I almost don't hate like I don't know, like maybe this is dumb, but like I'm kind of cool with like a version of this maybe where you like you can just pay uh any colors among Wooburg and then you get the spell for that type because I feel like
Hmm.
having like a these days like a 4 mana rare that needs to actually hit them to generate value. I think that that kind of value engine you could totally get value without having to always have all 5 colors of mana and also sacrifice it. But also it's more splashy that way, so like I'm going back and forth on this. But yeah, that's all I have to say on this card. Juliet, what is your next card going to be?
So let's stay in the MSE. It's 6 cards above. It's listed, designed by Bracsonian. The card's name is Drake Sighting. It's 1 in a blue sorcery. Scry 1, then draw a card. If a creature you control shares no creature types with any other creatures on the battlefield, instead scry 2 and draw 2 cards. Uh, and I feel like this is in the kind of reasonable but pushed place adjacent to like Chart a Course, where it's a blue draw 2 for mana value of 2, requires you to have a creature. I like the flavor of the like, oh wow, look at that, like being the creature, and you've got to have the creature there. Uh, and so I'm curious, like, does this feel at a fair rate? I personally might remove Scry from one half or the other, but I think that might disturb the symmetry for some people.
I think this reminds me of the spell that costs 1 less, the divination, when you control a creature with flying, and that feels and it only does draw 2. It feels a little easier than this one. I'm not, I'm not. I guess if you draw this late in the game, it's harder to pull this off. So it feels like this. You should get a little more than draw 2 cards, and maybe a scry 2, or maybe yeah, maybe that could be okay. Or maybe you just bring down the reward a little bit to land in that sweet spot between that spell from M21, I think. Yeah, and whatever, and this and where it's at now, maybe.
Yeah, this card was also on my list. I like again. I think that like the balance is one of those things where like I'm just cool on it cool on just checking it in development, but yeah, the flavor of this is super cool. Just like this idea that like you have this like burst of inspiration, uh, or like you have more knowledge because you actually saw a new creature is like a really cool thing. It reminds me a lot of in the custom set Monsters of Chikyu, which is like a Pokemon fan set. Um, the professor
Love
in
that
that,
set, by the way. Great set.
yeah, go check it
Sorry, go
out.
on.
They just, uh, yeah, so Monsters of Chikyu, Chikyu. Um, but the professor in that, Professor Maple, and Maple's journal, which is a legendary artifact flavored about her, her whole deal is like carrying like if you whenever you like cast a creature spell that doesn't share a name with a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, you get to copy it. And like this gave me the same vibe where the flavor is like this is an unknown creature, so like we're gonna like there's like value in that or like caring about that for flavor.
Mm.
So um and I like this on a more like micro scale of like and like and yeah like I like this idea of like make fantasy creatures exciting again in the sense of like I feel like there's this saturation of like uh dragons and drakes and all this and like fantasy to the point where like obviously we like accept them, but I would love to see like in universe worlds where it's like um it's not like the extremes of like there dragons are everywhere and everyone knows about them, and there's like the last dragon that we have to go find or whatever. Like just I like them as like semi cryptids or like just like those like rare species that are in the Amazon that like you that like we've documented 3 sightings of, but they're definitive sightings of. So it's like, ooh, like we know
Mm.
they exist. We know that there's a species of them. It's just that like we don't have like the depth of scientific knowledge on them yet. So it's always an exciting occasion to like go out and be like, oh, that thing.
I like that you mentioned Pokemon. I was actually or the Monsters of Chikyu set, and you know Pokemon in a way. Because I was actually going to bring up the same thing. With the very first episode of Pokemon. I know we're going lots of Pokemon here. Very first episode of Pokemon spots Ho-Oh and it's a magical like spotting, and then like brings up to the professor, and they're like, "Wow, I don't know what that is." And yeah, I definitely feel those vibes of like fantasy creatures that are still awe-inspiring. I think even how I got started in Magic in the first place was because of the box cover of the starter product I started with, which was a trained org on it. And that thing, I was like, what is that? I don't know, but it looks so wonderful. The art is great, and I'm mystified.
Oh
Totally,
yeah,
totally.
and like to add to artist appreciation hour, like so much of like getting hooked by like you can fall in love with cards like in spite of or independent of art, but like I feel like so much of just like being hooked onto cards is like wow, that just like visually is so appealing and it makes me ask questions. So yeah, so basically shout out to artists, and if you're doing custom cards, credit your artists.
Shout out to 7th edition.
Oh, yes. It's a good one. All new arts in that one, if we're talking
Yeah,
about art. Yeah.
they should do more sets where this is only reprints, but they all have new art. And they're traditional cards. You don't have to buy them in a premium pack or anything.
Mm.
Yeah, like the MSEM Masters sets are basically exactly that. The MSEM being like the, for those who don't know, one of the custom card constructed formats. Um, they started out as like a repository for the dude who makes them, Time Spiraled, to have like alt arts for his favorite cards, and he's like, wow, I have enough of these that I could like put together a limited environment. And then they got into the format, and it was just kind of like, yeah, we just do this yearly now so that we could have more art of the cards that people play, so people can have more art options. The Because of course in custom Magic spaces, it's not like you have to commission 300 more arts. It's just finding arts that match the vibe of the original card.
Very interesting.
But yeah, Bradley, what is your next card going to be?
Oh, oh, is this Juliet's?
Yeah, this one was mine.
Right. Yeah, yeah, so mine, let's go to the MSC file still, Snapdragon. All right. Here we go. We got this interesting type of plant, also dragon, of course. But I love that we've seen this before with removing counters for damage, so you know that it's not going to keep up walling. However, it has evolve, which makes this for this really cool gameplay here. You can try to keep growing it, and I think the dragonness of it kind of adds the thought of like, oh, okay, it's very like fiercely growing. This is more of a magical creatures type of energy, type of growth, a very surprising amount of growth. Yeah, and it's straightforward. Like just these two abilities together feels fun to do.
Yeah, this was also on my list. I like how this waxes and wanes. The name is a great pun. Shout out to Angel of Grace.
Yeah, this was also on my list. So the
Ooh,
the
the
classic
triple
triple.
D.
Yeah, not only did Angel of Grace get 2 cards on today's list, but also got the coveted triple. That yeah, put that on the bingo. But yeah, like I think our first set of cards was talking a lot about like mechanics, and I think that this is a card which is so like mechanically compelling because we've seen both of these abilities independent of each other, but putting them on together, especially when um, resetting counters here sets it up to evolve again, uh, and you can and it makes it easier to do that. So you have this back and forth kind of thing. Is like it's so cool. Um, yeah, it's just like it's one of those things where it's like, oh my god, duh! Why has no one done this before? This is just like incredibly compelling to think of like how this plays and like look at the interaction between these two mechanics. Um, I think that probably an adapt variant of this would also be cool, but probably to a lesser degree because I think having to have creatures to evolve this with is a good like power level cap to prevent it from being just like Infiniblocker and beyond kind of deal. Um, and yeah, it also makes it more compelling to like you don't want to just like put one counter on it and then wait for it to be removed. Here you can like build it up as like a real threat and then start swinging and they can't actually like double block or triple block to kill it or whatever. Um, but yeah, card good. Okay. Um, so let's see what the next card on my list is. Well, okay. Um, I've done one pun. Why not in for a penny, in for a pound? Let's go for Ryvern in the uh, MSC file. So this is 3 red and a green artifact creature, food dragon, um, and 4/4 flying haste. So definitely nothing to scoff at. Uh, and it's basically just it has the food ability. You can sacrifice foods to buff it, and it has delightful flavor text of your toast. And yeah, I just love the idea of like being like this whole like the entire thing is just the food pun, um, because rye is like the type of bread, but also it's just like mechanically really strong because it attacks as like a 6/4 haste. You can like sack it in response to removal to to like gain life. Um, and I like the idea of just like the idea of like you're burning your toast to be able to like get to like fuel this guy up, or it's being like burned as fuel to like get the fire breathing out there. But yeah, it's just a really simple dinky pun that also goes into a mechanically compelling card. Um, so shout out to Garduu, Garduu, for this design.
I I like that. I'm imagining loaves of bread is what's shot out instead of fireballs, which is really entertaining. So maybe sometimes they don't spit the bread at someone. Instead, they kind of spit it out for you to eat. And it's pretty Eldraine Dark to be also just eat your dragon. I also like that this is not like both the enemies of blue for whatever it means. I don't know what messaging there is besides the meta thing of here's the Ryvern, and then the Wyvern is like, but why? Uh this is straightforward. Loaves of bread fireballs is my favorite part of this.
Fun for being like a red hasty dragon that works in your life gain deck, which is not things that typically I see going together. Obviously, that's not the primary use of this card, but I think that's a fun kind of side thing. This seems like something that people would have fun with in limited and in like commander decks and a variety of different theme decks. I'm for it.
I guess one thing that like, if this is like an aggro top end consistently, I could see that being a little annoying. Where it's like it's a threat that also helps you really stabilize. So it can feel like whoever gets their Ryvern out first might just win. But also, like I think that like lots of aggro top end does that in different ways, and you can like definitely mitigate that by if they tap out for this and attack with it, you just swing back at them and kill them with some hasters or whatever before they get to untap and sack the foods. But yeah. Um, okay. So next up, Juliet. What is your next card going to be?
So I think this is my last card for the day. And it's on the mtg.design. This one is designed by Tzarl, or Tzarl. The card's name is Wyvernwarp. It's 2 blue and a red for sorcery. Um, when you cast it, you sacrifice a creature, and then the effect is you can put a dragon creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you don't, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. And I like how good the floor and ceiling are on this card. Like, if your only creatures are bigger than 4/4 flyers, then you're probably doing okay. But a lot of the times the floor here is a 4/4 flyer, and the ceiling is whatever cool dragons you put in this format. I think this could be a signpost for a really fun limited strategy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
full disclosure, this is also on my list. And I love so much about this because there's appropriate like costing. It's like 4 mana, which is usually what you want your show and tells to be to give them like some time to interact. Um, uh, Having to sacrifice a creature means that you can't just play this in pure combo. You're gonna need like a dork or something. So you're gonna need like either you're gonna need to like play 3 colors, and there's like different like it essentially has deck building requirements that you usually would not expect for these type of combo decks. Um, but in return, you get this really cool fail case of like, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna be the beatdown now. 4/4 red dragon, let's go. I so you don't have that usual show and tell thing of like getting because you're playing A+B, you get wrong halved, and it's like drat. Um, so it feels like a card that's just like it feels good for everyone involved because for your opponent they have counterplay of like okay I can if I bolt the bird I get even more value than I usually do, and for the opponent and for the person playing it it's like okay cool, I may not have drawn my dragon but I can get this 4/4 red dragon and then just start swinging out or start eating their aggro creatures or what have you. So and again, I think that I think we recently found out in the mechanical color pie that like blue doesn't get um, opponent transform anymore, like Pongify style stuff. But I think that this kind of thing, especially when paired with red, it just feels like very color appropriate without also like flavorfully without also like breaking the pie. Um, so yeah, because it doesn't like violate the weakness of not having removal. It's just a case of like a polymorph style effect, which blue still gets to my knowledge. Um, but yeah, card good.
I uh I also like that this is as Juliet mentioned, this is could be a nice signpost. Especially since uh dragons are expensive, right? And then what Caillou you're saying, like it's good to have the 4/4 there is just in case, because dragons are also tend to be rare, right? So you might not draw, a lot of dragons in your pool. What this reminds me of is trying to play dragons in Onslaught block when Scourge came out, and it was like, okay, here we're all about dragons now. A couple ways to mitigate that was Temple of the False God and the Barbarian that makes dragons cost 2 less. Those are ways to go and try to cheat out dragons. But this way is a very elegant way, like you all in one. If you have the dragon, cool, you get to cheat it out. If you don't, it's not a dead card. You don't have to A plus B it. You can still get a nice sweet dragon.
Yeah, that made me think this is a really good way to like. I think you could even have like variations on this effect at common, uh, to if you're doing like dragon tribal or like cares about you controlling a dragon, having this sort of like polymorph upgrade into a dragon, uh, feels like a cool way of being able to do that without like violating the rule of cool factor of dragons. So
Mhm.
yeah.
This also would be a good fit in a blue-red tokens strategy. Um, like dragon fodder, of course, would be a perfect, kind of fit if you
Ah,
have like tokens and dragons that eat them, or tokens and dragons in general, sort of thing. But if you've got a like, tokens matter, but a lot of the tokens are 1/1s. And here's a token for you, that is happy to eat one of your 1/1s from your dragon fodder type of spell. But this one is, the thing you get is also a token that can benefit from stuff.
Okay, Bradley, what is your next card going to be?
okay, MSE. Let's go to Wyvern Hunter. Okay, we've got a batch going on here, which I appreciate here for more than one reason. Here, we for how folks have interpreted Wyvern. There we've seen dragons, we've seen drakes. It's like, what are they? But this one clumps them together, which is cool. It brings them together into a batched keyword, but also puts in legendary creatures of flying, which I think is an interesting approach, because it also reminds me of uh, Final Fantasies like Dragoon having some kind of weird draconic element to that class slash job, and it can like jump in the air. And so you can maybe call in this magic world like things that fly but are like these whatever cool type of characters. You can call them wyverns, but they're not like fantasy creatures. So I appreciate just throwing those in there as a way to make it unique. And yes, there's also a nice little weapon token thing, which it feels familiar to me, but uh, my favorite part is the batching of the wyverns. But I think this is also a cool thing to unsheath a weapon to add to a creature.
This is the third custom weapon token. Um,
Okay,
there's
yeah.
weapon with there's weapon which is equipment with equipped creature gets +1/+1. There's another weapon token with equipped creature gets +1/+0, and then this.
Mhm.
Um, and confusingly, both of the first two are created by a mechanic called Arm, so it that's definitely it caused some confusion in the past. But yeah, when you were talking about the batching here, all I could think of in my mind was like the is it a dragon? Is it a drake? No, it's Adeliz. Just like the
Ah,
the
bird of plane. Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, yeah, you could also do literal bird or plane with like, is that yeah, Tashar is a bird, right? Is that Tashar? Is that Heart of Kirin? No, it's Adeliz. Just, hmm and I think that we've seen because there's literal Dragon Hunter from like Khans of Tarkir block, right? So I like this as like the little sibling of that.
Mm.
Um,
The the batching here makes me think about like really kind of pointing to home that like, hey, the difference between an angel and a dragon is less than you think. The difference between something that is like significantly more powerful than you and can fly above you and like kill your whole village in one stroke, they're all, equidistant realistically. Or there's a bit in Dragon Age Origins about whether or not the like progenitor savior of the bigger religion is also in fact a dragon, and that's that whole cool thing between like angels and dragons. I I get the feeling that this card is potentially a top-down monster hunter card. Um, that's what the like when the creature dies, get a weapon, I think says to me. The like Monster Hunter is a game where you go and you fight
Uh,
big beasties and then like take parts of their bodies and like craft them together slowly to build better weapons and better like stat bonuses and stuff. Like the game is just boss fights basically. And
yeah, wow.
I want to say that wyverns are a like enemy like whole like species clade. But I've not played Monster Hunter myself to say, but I think this is a top-down Monster Hunter card.
Awesome. I'm glad you called it out. If it's, I totally missed it. I haven't played that series. If it is so,
Yeah, like, I haven't played it either, but now that I look at it, the ostentatious armor and the absolutely ridiculous weapon size, uh, it, that definitely feels like a Monster Hunter type thing.
mm, yeah, I definitely recognize the
Also,
crafting.
wait,
That's
I
definitely
I just realized that the artist's name is Drake, and now I'm
oh
wondering.
no.
No, so I'm wondering if, because on ArtStation, if you can like, is sometimes even if you search by artwork instead of artist, like because of how like arts are tagged, uh, artists like arts can be recommended to you based on the artist name. So I'm wondering if that's what happened with this, like that
Wow.
MBTree searched up Drake, and then this is what came up.
That's so funny.
If that's the
I,
case,
I
that would be
want that.
hilarious.
I want that canon to be true.
I'll hit them up and ask them. Okay, so with this, let's do a small final round. Um, so yeah, so Bradley, whatever your next card is, it's gonna be your last. Um,
Oh boy.
for me, I'm going to end this as I started it with an innocuous but to me intriguing mechanical space. Let's go to Untamed Wyvern in MTG.design. 3 in a red, whenever you draw a card or play your second card in a turn, target creature can't block this turn. Tap, Untamed Wyvern deals 1 damage to target creature. Now, I think that the tap ability, I would be more interested in it if it like facilitated the first line, but I really, and also like it feels kind of criminal to like have this creature which so clearly has wings but not give it flying. That feels like it'll cause some like confusion in players. But that first ability of batching, drawing, and playing your second card in a turn, uh, like I can't recall a canon set doing that. Like, poke me here if I'm forgetting something. No,
Yeah, I can't know. Yeah.
but that feels like a super cool way to like do that, where it's like, um, you're drawing more cards and therefore you're like, um, you have more stuff to play, and also but also like you don't need like an excess of draw effects in your environment. You just need like cheap spells, and then also when you have like cheap cantrips that can enable both, so you can have like these really weak effects that start adding up exponent like or like really weak for rate effects that start adding up at a terrifying rate, because people are just playing lots of cheap spells alongside cantrips, and it's just like, oh god, like my Defiance Strike, they Defiance Strike into an opt, and all of a sudden my entire board can't block. What's going on here? Just like stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I really appreciate that batching, and it's something that I want to see custom designers potentially explore in the future.
I'm looking at yeah. Oh my gosh, like red, blue archetype. has one or the other. So it feels cool to batch them together, especially when the creature type line is choosing to do wyvern here. It's like, what does it mean to be a wyvern? Maybe it's actually the middling between some drakes and dragons. It's this separate type of species, and they get to have their own weird carved out space. And I'm looking at the activated ability. I'm like, I wonder how often I would actually use it, but maybe depending on the environment, I would want to pick off ones, but also maybe it's trying to demonstrate based off the art that it like spits some fire a little bit, and then it's thrown in there as a little bonus.
I think the first batching setup is like, I don't know that we'll ever get to see any more of the Jeskai, because of how the whole like Tarkir block went with all the time travel and everything. But I think
Mhm.
this would be a great like uh mechanic for the Jeskai. This like, you draw your second card, you're like in meditation, and then you play two cards the next turn. You're like stillness and then action, and like going back and forth and stuff. I think you could do some fun things flavor wise there. The second ability, if your card's named Untamed Wyvern and it has this like tap ability, I also expect it to deal one damage to you, or one damage to itself, or one damage to like something you control, because it's untamed. I think that would really help the second ability.
Okay, so Bradley, what is our last card of the day going to be?
Yeah, let's go over to MSE file. Let's choose Paradox Drake. Okay. First of all, very cool art. Very cool. So we've seen red blue Drake, as mentioned before. We got the signpost stuff. But more recently in like Guilds of Ravnica, and I guess even in Midnight Hunt with Seize the Storm. And in Strixhaven, wow, I did a search beforehand, but for caring about spells in both exile and in graveyard, that's like a thing that's now done with these flashbacks and jump starts. And we've also seen another where it's only the graveyard. But this one is cared about only exile. I haven't seen this before yet, and I think that still applies for blue red. Like there could be a blue red environment that really casts a lot of instants and sorceries, maybe especially if it's me in like a Commander Legendsy type of draft or etc. Like I get really excited about the fact that blue and red really likes to just exile their like reuse their spells and exile them, and then there's some card out there that just cares about instant sorceries only in exile. I think that's a thing that maybe should happen at some point.
Yeah, and like this makes me like have a lot of questions about the environment, and or this could just be like I forget what there's basically like exactly this, except it doesn't have haste from like a Moncat or something, except it cares about instants or sorceries in your graveyard. Um, and I could see just
Hmm.
like this being like adding the haste and then but then having it be in exile as like a balancing point, so that you have to actually like do some work more than casting it from your hand to get there. But yeah, this is like again, it asks a lot of it makes you ask a lot of interesting questions about the environment in a way that I can appreciate, while also not being too outside the scope of what we've seen recently. So yeah. And also, I super agree about the art. Nim has been doing all of their own art for their designs, and it, they're just fantastic. So, big love
Yeah,
there.
I want to third the appreciation for the art, appreciation for the simplicity and the big. Okay, and then what set mechanic? What cool keyword that removes stuff? I think it'd be interesting to play this. I mean, Delve doesn't need more to make it more broken or anything, but I think this would be interesting to play alongside something like Delve.
Ooh,
Um,
the
uh,
not
mhm.
that like Delver needs any more threats anymore, but like Murktide Regent with this. Ooh, that sounds great. Good time.
Like this card doesn't have Delves, but like it's one of those things that like, oh, it plays alongside your delve cards, or
Mm.
but I mean it also, plays well alongside rest in peace. So like
Your
uh
mileage may vary.
yeah. Maybe do the Prismari like pitch for treasure thing, but make it like exile.
I've
So
seen stuff.
you're not even casting your sorcery spells. You're
Yeah.
Um,
just pitching them.
yeah, one mechanic that is made by Kino Therapy, designer of Living in Scar City. Cool set, go check it out. But a mechanic that they pitched is a thing called Eclipse, where it's essentially you cycle it, but you cycle it into exile, and then you can cast it from exile later if you have no cards in hand. Um, and I kind of really love an idea of an environment with this there. Uh, or just like maybe you can cast it from
Mm.
exile, but it costs two more to cast it. Something like that, where it's just like cycling adjacent, but it gives you a way to like not throw away a bunch of instant sorceries, but put them in a space where this card can get more powerful.
Yeah. Oh, and before I forget, I forgot to mention back, um, since we're talking about the coveted triple league thing, Wyvernwarp was also on my list. So hats off, hat trick for that as well.
Nice. Yeah, and I think that like when we're having like the same card on our list, it's just like I mentioned this before, but like it kind of like appeals to different personalities or different like designer senses because while I think there's definitely areas we overlap on that we appreciate, I think that like there's obviously still like things that like I prefer this type of thing more, I prefer this type of thing more. That's just how like people and Magic players are. So I think that when you design a card that hits everyone, that's like a good sign that you've got something cool there. Not to say that if only one
Mm.
of us has it on our list, it's bad or anything. Um, that's definitely not the takeaway. We are a very small sample size, but it's just a cool thing of like you've resonated.
And this close to the end of the month, I just want to give another shout out to everyone designing this whole month. Shout out to all of you for participating in Moxtober. Just that I
Yeah,
might not be on the 31st one, so
no, makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
that's
So
great.
and yeah, so thanks to everyone. Um, and as I've been saying for the past few days, um, and also specifically since Juliet is here as well, uh, if you've worked on like a month long project for Moxtober, um, uh, message me or let me know. I would love to have after Moxtober is over, uh, kind of like a retrospective on those projects as a whole because we've seen like bits and pieces of people's like overarching Moxtober projects, but obviously we can't feature each and every one of those cards for each and every day. So being able to see them collected in one place and hear like the philosophy behind it would be super cool. So yeah, if that applies to you, hit me up. Otherwise, we've come to the end of today's show. As always, you can find designer credits, the full files which we pulled all of these cards from, and instructions on how you can submit your own cards to these files to be considered for future episodes in the description. Thanks to Juliet and Bradley for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, bye.